Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to dive into something that's often out of sight and, frankly, out of mind: the water we drink every single day. We're going to break down some material that shines a light on the invisible threats that could be lurking in your tap water and a specific technology that's been proposed to fight them.
So let me just ask you this straight up. When was the last time you really stopped to think about what's in that glass of water you just filled up? We all do it, right? We just turn on the tap, fill our glass, and assume that because it looks clear, it must be clean. But is it really?
Okay, so take a look at this. On one side, you have what we all see, a perfectly normal, crystal clear glass of water. Looks harmless, right? But on the other side, well, that's the reality this material describes. An invisible army of bacteria and parasites, a whole microscopic world we can't see at all.
And hey, if you're thinking, phew, I'm safe, I only drink bottled water, you might want to hold that thought. The source we're looking at points out that sometimes those bottled and water cooler sources can be even worse than tap water. Why? Well, it's pretty simple. They don't have chlorine. That chemical smell we sometimes notice in tap water, that's what's keeping a lot of these nasty microbes from multiplying like crazy.
All right, so let's get specific. What exactly are we talking about when we say invisible threat? Let's pull back the curtain and meet the cast of characters.
The source material calls it a bacterial zoo, and that's a pretty good description. You've got things like E. coli, which is a big red flag for fecal contamination and can lead to kidney failure. Then there's Salmonella, and nope, it's not just from undercooked chicken. And Campylobacter, which causes pain so intense it's often mistaken for appendicitis. And then the really scary one, Legionella, which thrives in our water systems and causes a deadly type of pneumonia.
And it doesn't stop with bacteria. We've also got parasitic intruders. Think Cryptosporidium and Giardia. Now, what makes these guys so tough is that they're super resistant to chlorine, which is our main line of defense. And here's the kicker. It can take just a tiny number of these organisms to make you incredibly sick for weeks on end.
Now, I know this all might be sounding a little like science fiction, maybe a bit abstract, but these threats aren't just theoretical. They have led to some very real and sometimes tragic consequences. Let's look at what happens when things go wrong.
It's so easy to think, yeah, but that couldn't happen here, not where I live. We assume our systems are foolproof. But as the source material makes painfully clear, these nightmares have unfolded in modern American cities where the water looked, smelled, and tasted perfectly fine right up until it wasn't.
Can you imagine getting an alert on your phone that says this? Not boil your water, just do not use. That was the reality for the people of Lake Jackson, Texas. Why? Because they found the terrifying brain-eating amoeba, Naegleria fowli, in the city's water supply. It ultimately led to the tragic death of a 6-year-old boy.
This table just lays it all out in stark, simple terms. Lake Jackson, the amoeba, Flint, Michigan. While we all heard about the lead, it was Legionella bacteria that silently killed 12 people and put hundreds in the hospital. And those parasites we talked about, they can pop up anywhere, causing widespread illness. The key takeaway here is that this is not a hypothetical risk. It's real.
And it's not just the main city pipes you have to think about. What about that water cooler at the office? The source calls it a bacterial party spot. And here's why. Over time, this slimy layer called a biofilm builds up inside the dispenser. You can think of it as a cozy little apartment building for bacteria where they can thrive, protected and undisturbed, mainly because, let's be honest, those units almost never get properly cleaned.
Okay, so that's the problem. It's invisible, it's serious, and it's frankly pretty unsettling. But the material doesn't just drop this bad news and leave us there. It also details a potential solution. So let's shift gears and look at the technology designed to fight back, a system it calls the T-18.
So how does this thing supposedly work? Well, according to the source, it's all about a three-pronged attack. First, it uses an incredibly fine filtration system, one that can actually trap things that are smaller than a single red blood cell. Second, it uses oxidation to literally rip apart the cell walls of bacteria. And third, it has specialized treatments built in to target very specific, very dangerous pathogens.
So let's go back to Legionella for a second, that really nasty bacteria. It turns out it loves the kind of environment we accidentally create for it in our homes. It thrives on scale buildup inside pipes, it loves the rust from older plumbing, and it just flourishes in the warm water of our water heaters. It's basically the perfect breeding ground.
So, knowing what Legionella loves, this is how the T-18 system is described as fighting it. It apparently helps reduce that scale formation, it creates an environment that slows down rust and corrosion, and, this is key, it stays effective even in the warm water where Legionella wants to grow. It's designed to attack the problem at its source.
But the way this system is presented, it's about much more than just bacteria. The source describes it as being a complete bodyguard for your water.
It's positioned as being more than just a filter. It's said to physically reduce those tough, chlorine-resistant parasites. The source also talks about it acting as a cleanup crew for things like industrial chemicals and agricultural runoff that get into our water supply. And on top of all that, it's designed to make your water actually taste and smell better by getting rid of those funky compounds.
So why does all of this really matter? Well, because while having safer water is good for everyone, for some people in our families and communities, it's not just a nice to have. It's an absolute necessity.
Let's start with the little ones. For kids and babies, their immune systems are still under construction. A contaminant that might just give an adult an upset stomach could hit them so much harder and faster. Their bodies just haven't built up the defenses to fight it off yet.
And it's a very similar story for older adults. As we age, our immune systems naturally become a bit less robust. A waterborne bug that would have been a minor issue years ago could be the very thing that lands them in the hospital. For them, safe water is a huge part of staying healthy and out of the emergency room.
And finally, we have to talk about people who are immunocompromised. Whether they're going through chemotherapy or living with an autoimmune condition, their defenses are already lowered. For them, exposure to these pathogens isn't just risky, it can be absolutely catastrophic. This level of protection becomes an essential shield.
So, when you boil it all down, the main point the source makes is this. The T-18 system is framed as being more than just a piece of technology. It's presented as a form of insurance. It's peace of mind against all those invisible threats that, let's be honest, we'd all rather just not have to think about every time we turn on the tap.
And that really brings us to the final, thought-provoking question from the material. You know, we lock our doors at night, we wear seatbelts when we drive, we do these things without a second thought to protect ourselves. But what about the water we and our families consume every single day? The material really just leaves us to think about it. In a world full of invisible threats, what is that peace of mind truly worth to you?